Today, we're looking at space movies that tell the stories of real astronauts, or at least try to. These aren't documentaries, so in some cases you'll see a lot of Hollywood drama, and in others, films that don't shy away from straight-up propaganda. Either way, there really aren't that many in this category, so we'll try to go through the whole lineup. Philip Kaufman's 1983 epic The Right Stuff isn't as widely known today as it probably should be. Still, it proved culturally significant enough to be selected by the U.S. Library of Congress for preservation in the National Film Registry. The film is based on Tom Wolfe's non-fiction book and runs close to 3 hours. It opens with test pilot Chuck Yeager breaking the sound barrier in 1947. From there, it follows the early years of America's space program and the Mercury astronauts from 1958 to 1963. You feel the pressure of the space race and the push to beat the Soviet Union. The story moves between Yeager's lone path and the public image of the Mercury 7. Kaufman draws a contrast between Yeager's quiet stoicism and the more performative masculinity of the astronauts, and it keeps circling one question: who really had the right stuff? The technical hurdles and the danger of early flight and space travel come through with a strong sense of realism. Christopher Nolan called it an almost perfectly made film and screened it for the Interstellar crew before production. He took inspiration from Kaufman's use of projected space imagery and avoided green screens, choosing on-set visual stimuli to help ground the actors' performances. But in 1983, The Right Stuff still struggled at the box office, which is a shame. It's one of the best movies of that year, and one of the most exciting films about our urge to break free from the pull of Earth's gravity. Now, let's move to the other side of the space race. The Russian movie Gagarin, First in Space, follows Yuri Gagarin's historic 108-minute orbit on April 12, 1961. It covers his selection from thousands of Soviet pilots and the intense training that led to the mission. The structure shifts between the flight itself and moments from Gagarin's earlier life. However, the film often leans into hero worship. Gagarin is portrayed as nearly flawless and emotionally unshaken, which can make him feel less human. At times, the tone is openly patriotic and heavy-handed, leaving little room for doubt or complexity. It's not a perfect film, and since it's in Russian, watching it will likely mean using subtitles. But for the sake of completeness, it belongs on this list. There simply isn't another narrative film about Gagarin to include. This isn't a film I can recommend to everyone, but it still belongs on this list. The Spacewalker, another Russian film, tells the story of Alexei Leonov's first spacewalk in 1965. During the mission, Leonov's spacesuit inflated in the vacuum, making it extremely difficult to get back inside the airlock. He had to release pressure from the suit to squeeze back in, risking his life in the process. The problems didn't end there, and the return to Earth was far from smooth. Visually, the space sequences are solid, and the danger feels real, but the tone is complicated. Instead of questioning the cost of the mission, the film leans heavily into patriotic grandeur. It didn't fully work for me, but it did make me want to learn more about what actually happened. And if you're curious too, Two Sides of the Moon, Leonov's memoir co-written with Apollo astronaut David Scott, is a much better way to explore the story. We've covered the first man in space and the first spacewalk. Now let's talk about the first man on the moon. Directed by Damien Chazelle and starring Ryan Gosling, First Man follows Neil Armstrong in the years leading up to Apollo 11. Some critics reduced it to a sad man movie, but Gosling's performance reflects how Armstrong was often described: private, controlled, not given to emotional display. One of the film's strengths is that it refuses to turn the story into a triumphant spectacle. Early space travel feels unstable and frightening rather than heroic. Of course, that choice didn't work for everyone, and even before release, there was controversy. Some commentators criticized the film for not centering the planting of the American flag. The flag appears on the lunar surface, but the act of placing it isn't framed as the defining image, which to me is a strength rather than a flaw. The film still holds up on rewatch, and it seems like it deserved more appreciation than it received. This isn't the last film on the list, but it's the last Russian one. It's called Salyut 7, and I've even seen it listed as the true story of the Soviet Apollo 13. The story centers on the 1985 mission to save a drifting space station that had gone silent. With no power and no contact from Earth, Salyut 7 was considered lost. Cosmonauts Vladimir Janibekov and Viktor Savinik were sent to dock manually with the frozen station. When they finally entered, the interior was covered in ice. It's still regarded as one of the most daring rescue missions in spaceflight history. Some parts feel a bit chaotic, and it's definitely not documentary accurate. Still, I wouldn't call it boring. It works as solid entertainment, and the visual effects are genuinely impressive. Probably the easiest film to watch on this list is A Million Miles Away. It's family-friendly, uplifting, and clearly meant to inspire. The film follows Jose Hernandez, a Mexican-American farm worker who grows up helping his family pick crops in California while dreaming of becoming an astronaut. He studies engineering, faces rejection from NASA again and again, and keeps applying until he's finally accepted into the program. Michael Peña plays Hernandez as relentlessly kind and determined. The movie sticks to familiar biopic beats, but as a feel-good story about chasing an almost impossible dream, it works. And now we've reached the last, and probably the best film on this list. Apollo 13, released in 1995 and directed by Ron Howard, remains one of the most respected space dramas ever made. The film is a dramatic retelling of the aborted 1970 lunar mission based on the book Lost Moon by astronaut Jim Lovell and journalist Jeffrey Kluger. Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Haise were headed for what was supposed to be the third moon landing. Instead, after an explosion crippled the spacecraft and destroyed much of its oxygen and power supply, the mission was aborted. The goal became much simpler and much more urgent: bring the three men home alive. The film is extremely accurate, especially in its technical details. The depiction of zero gravity, the explosion itself, and the engineering problem-solving feel grounded and precise. The one noticeable exaggeration is the argument between the astronauts, but we can forgive that. After all, this isn't a documentary. The performances are strong across the board, and of course, there's the line everyone remembers.
Houston, we have a problem.